Okay. Good evening. My name is George Nearsu. I'm the MLA for the Mackenzie Delta, Deputy Chair of this committee. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to receive a briefing on lead contamination in NWT schools. This meeting is being live streamed on the Assembly's social media channel. To keep the meeting running smoothly, please wait to be recognized and for your mic to be turned on before speaking. And please direct all comments and questions to the chair. I will now ask the members to introduce themselves, starting with my near left here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome, everybody. I'm Danny McNeely, representing, or the MLA for the Satu.
Kieran Testart, MLA for Range Lake.
Sorry, yeah. Richard Jarek on the MLA for Trinidad. Let's see.
We have some members and alternates on line. Can you introduce yourselves, starting with Mr. Hawkins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. My name is Robert Hawkins. I'm MLA for Yellowknife Center. Although I'm happy to be here, this is a very difficult subject, and I look forward to the briefing. Thank you.
Mr. Morris?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Julian Morse, MLA for Frame Lake and Yellowknife.
Mr. Reed?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. MLA Kate Reed for Great Slave here in Yellowknife.
Ms. Morgan?
Good evening. I'm Shauna Morgan, MLA for Yellowknife North.
This evening, committee welcomes Caitlin Cleveland, Minister of Education, Culture and Employment, Lisa Simler, Minister of Health and Social Services, Vince McKay, Minister of Infrastructure, and Dr. Gondola, Chief Public Health Officer. They are accompanied by deputy ministers and staff who will be introduced during the opening remarks. Thank you for joining us. We will start with opening remarks from Minister Cleveland, then Minister Simler and Minister McKay, followed by your presentation. Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. As committee is aware, water testing results from junior kindergarten to grade 12 schools this year led to the discovery of elevated lead levels in drinking water. The well-being of our students is an issue I take extremely seriously, and I appreciate being able to provide committee with further information on where we are at. Today I am joined by Jamie Fulford, Deputy Minister of Education, Culture and Employment, Terry Lynn Lock-Setter, Assistant Deputy Minister, Corporate Services, and my Ministerial Special Advisor, Nigel Woodrich. Mr. Chair, following new guidelines for lead in drinking water by Health Canada in 2019 and the discovery of lead in school drinking water in other jurisdictions across Canada, the GNWT developed a proactive pilot testing program to sample water in NWT schools. There were concerns raised regarding testing methodology, results, and delays. To immediately address these concerns, I ordered a third-party review to understand what went wrong and what can be improved moving forward. In October, a territory-wide testing protocol was launched for all Northwest Territories junior kindergarten to grade 12 schools. This is a rigorous protocol that outlines a clear, consistent, and science-based approach to sampling and testing, grounded in Health Canada's guidance and approved by the Office of the Chief Public Health Officer, specifically for buildings like our JK to 12 schools. This means that risks are identified with greater confidence and more reliability. This information is essential for decision-making. One of those decisions was that we support any education body that chooses to provide alternate drinking water sources while testing continues. This is a precautionary measure and one that I feel is essential for staff, students, and their families to feel confident in their drinking water. Mr. Chair, I can confirm that testing will continue in every region through the established protocol. All 49 NWT schools will have testing completed by the end of the 2025-26 school year, and remediation will continue wherever issues are found. Water service will only be brought back online for affected water sources once the Office of the Chief Public Health Officer confirms that they meet Health Canada's standards. I recognize that the results from the testing are concerning. However, this information is essential to pinpoint where the issues are and resolve them quickly. Mr. Chair, school staff, students, and families deserve to have confidence, clarity, and certainty in the water they consume in NWT schools. And we are working with our colleagues in infrastructure, health, and MACA, and with the schools and education body themselves to provide it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This concludes my opening remarks and would like to pass to my colleague, Minister Semler.
Minister Simler, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to meet with you today. I am joined today by Dr. Kami Kandola, the Chief Public Health Officer, and online Shrag Rohit, Chief Environmental Health Officer, as well as my Ministerial Advisor, Ali Simpson. I want to start by acknowledging the concern that this has caused families and staff. Safe drinking water in school is a priority for all of us, and ensuring that the health and safety of children is paramount. The Department of Education, Culture and Employment and Infrastructure are leading the testing and mitigation work on this file, and they will speak to those details. The role of the Office of the Chief Public Health Officer is primarily to provide advice aimed at the elimination of the source of exposure. Specific to this issue, the Office of the Chief Public Health Officer reviews and approves sampling plans and mitigation measures, issues public health orders when needed. When elevated lead levels are confirmed, the Office of the Chief Public Health Office issues public health orders requiring affected fixtures to be taken out of service and alternate drinking water to be provided. If future tests confirm elevated levels, the Office of the Chief Public Health Office will take the same protective steps immediately to prevent further exposure. There are no concerns with municipal water supplies. This issue relates to fixtures inside certain school buildings. Some schools may have older plumbing components or fixtures that contain lead. That is why GNWT is testing every school and replacing affected fixtures as part of the mitigation efforts, as well as reviewing for any plumbing concerns. Lead in school drinking water is a known issue across Canada, mainly caused by older plumbing and fixtures, not by community water systems. As of this week, 13 schools have been sampled and results have been received from 8. 6 public health orders have been issued and 5 remain active while mitigation and retesting continue. Alternate drinking water is in place at all the affected schools. All individuals who received blood testing for lead due to school exposure showed nothing within the range of concern. While this is reassuring, anyone with concern should speak to their healthcare provider. The GNWT follows Health Canada's strict standards for lead in drinking water. If a public health order is issued, it will not be lifted until testing confirms water is safe, at which point the Office of the Chief Public Health Officer lifts the order. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister Simler. Mr. McKay?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to begin by reaffirming that the safety of the students and school staff is the top of mind with every test result and the remediation steps that we take. I would like to thank committee for inviting us here to provide a briefing on the status of lead testing in the schools. Joining me tonight is Deputy Minister Kathy Maniego and Assistant Deputy Minister of Infrastructure, Celeste McKay. Addressing lead contamination in the school water is a crucial priority. We anticipated that some plumbing systems would show elevated levels, and we were fully prepared to respond. Remediation is already underway, and we remain committed to ensuring every territorial school's water system is safe and reliable for students and staff. As we continue to test, we know our findings will understandably be concerning. However, this approach also demonstrates that our expanded testing initiative is working as intended. We are identifying issues so that we can address them quickly and effectively. The Department of Infrastructure is currently is working closely with our partners through a multi-departmental steering committee and working group. Together, we are coordinating both the immediate response to the results in the schools and the long-term planning required to strengthen the water testing practices across the territory. We have finalized testing protocols for the schools, and preparation is underway for testing all JK to grade 12 schools across the territory. As this work moves forward, infrastructure continues to provide technical support to help define the scope and any plumbing fixtures that may require that may be required to be repaired in affected buildings. While it can be challenging to pinpoint the exact pipe, fixture, or fitting responsible for the elevated lead levels within the plumbing system, our thorough approach involves continued testing and systematic elimination of potential sources. Once a source is identified, we take immediate action. This action may include replacing plumbing fixtures or sections of piping, installing certified filtration systems, implementing a flushing protocol, or using a combination of these methods. Testing continues throughout the process to confirm that the issue has been fully resolved and that the water is safe. As our testing schedule prioritizes the oldest schools, those with the highest risk, we expect more elevated levels to appear in the early testing of the program. This is not a sign of a problem that is growing, it simply reflects the order in which the buildings are being tested. By focusing first on the older, high-risk facilities, we are ensuring that the most vulnerable locations are addressed promptly. We are acting quickly, transparently, and collaboratively. Our work will continue until the school drinking water across the territory meets all the safety standards. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We'll start with our presentation. Who will be doing the presentation?
Mr. Chair, I will start with the presentation, if it pleases the committee, and I'll then turn it over halfway through to my colleague, Deputy Minister Maniego.
Okay, you can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So for this briefing, we'll provide some background details, outline roles and responsibilities, the current operating procedures and sampling procedures, as well as communications efforts. We'll also cover the source of the lead, remediation options, and the current status. By way of background, in 2019, Health Canada set out a new guideline for lead in drinking water. The maximum acceptable concentration, or MAC, was lowered from 0.01 milligrams per liter to 0.005 milligrams per liter, so it was cut in half there. ECE and infrastructure developed a proactive pilot testing program due to reports of high levels of lead in drinking water in schools in other jurisdictions. Designed as an initial low-resource screening effort to detect any signs of elevated lead levels that could indicate the need for more comprehensive testing. The sampling protocol followed ALS Canada Limited's procedures, which align with the NWT drinking water sampling and testing requirements. These protocols assess water quality at the time of sampling. The initiative was not based on the Health Canada guidance for building-wide lead testing and was not intended to determine the source of lead or assess overall building risk, even in cases where elevated lead levels were detected. A territory-wide testing protocol was launched in October 2025 for all NWT schools, JK to 12. The protocol outlines a clear, consistent, and science-based approach to sampling and testing water in all NWT junior kindergarten to grade 12 schools. It is grounded in Health Canada's guidance and approved by the Office of the Chief Public Health Officer. NWT schools range in age from 3 to 68 years old and have undergone a variety of retrofits and renovations over time, so all schools will undergo this testing program. Order of school testing is based on factors such as the screening from previous testing conducted, facility age, and number and age of children in the school, and was informed by infrastructure and ECE. If elevated levels of lead are found, immediate action is taken. In December 2025, alternate sources of drinking water were offered by the GNWT to all schools as a precaution. Testing of all schools will be completed by the end of the 2025-26 school year. Schools are being prioritized ahead of other GNWT assets because children are an at-risk population for health outcomes related to lead exposure. After school testing is complete, the GNWT will do a risk assessment to determine which other GNWT buildings must also undergo water testing. This issue is not limited to GNWT buildings or even the territory. This is an issue being addressed Canada-wide, and that includes jurisdictions like British Columbia, where they continue to test for lead in schools. Roles and responsibilities. Working group and steering committees have been established to guide this work. This table breaks down the roles and responsibilities by different departments and agencies. And I'm not sure whether there's too much value in me reading through the slide and the chart. So maybe I'll move to the next slide. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Current operating procedures. The GNWT has a standard operating procedure for water testing and reporting results. Prior to testing, we set the testing schedule and work with schools to coordinate the testing. After testing, the GNWT working group receives the results and conducts an analysis. The Chief Public Health Officer will determine if a public health order is required, and if so, notifies school leadership. Sampling procedures. Samples are taken at every source of potable water, as well as a sample representative of municipal water to confirm exceedances are within the building. So you can see on this slide, it sets out the difference between the Tier 1 sample, which is collected after 8 hours of stagnation overnight. You need to have someone there in the morning to catch the sample before the water starts moving. Then you have a general chemistry sample collected after flushing the tap for 5 minutes prior to stagnation, which gives us a baseline for a clean system, and then Tier 2 sample collected after flushing the tap for 5 minutes, followed by 30 minutes of further stagnation, which reflects typical water use during the day and represents lead exposure under regular conditions. The CPHO focuses on these results to assess human health risk. Communications. Communications protocols have been built into the standard operating procedures and include public service announcements, direct communication to families, students, and staff at the affected school, and regular website updates. And you can see on the slide there's a reference to the lead testing and JK-12 school drinking water webpage, which is updated regularly and includes a list of the schools scheduled for testing in the near term, how the testing works, actions under the protocol, testing results, and information about lead and health. And I believe I'm turning the clicker, Mr. Chair, over to my colleague, Deputy Minister Maniego. Thank you.
Deputy Minister, you can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So where is the lead coming from? We are confident that lead exceedances are the result of building plumbing, not municipal drinking water. Sampling of municipal water is conducted regularly by community governments, and no tests have shown presence of lead in municipal drinking water. During the school water testing, samples of water representative of the municipal supply are taken at that point where it enters the school building and also indicate no lead. There are two main sources that we're finding for the lead, and that is the older brass fixtures and the older pipe solder. The fixtures are typically, they're certified low lead plumbing fixtures that came into effect in Canada in 2014. So that required brass fixtures to have a weighted average of no more than 0.25% lead content for drinking water systems. Prior to that, older materials were allowed up to 8% lead content. For the solder, it was banned officially in 1986, but that was published in the 1990 National Plumbing Code to provide time for it to leave the supply chain. They're still allowed to contain 0.2% lead content, which under certain conditions could result in lead leaching, which is why we continue to test even the newer schools. It's difficult to determine the exact pipe or fitting that the source of the lead contamination is inside that plumbing system. It's typically through a method of elimination. The issue can be isolated through continued testing and elimination of those potential sources down the line. Once the source is isolated, it is mitigated by replacing plumbing fixtures, replacing piping, decommissioning unused fixtures, installing filters, point-of-use filters, or implementing a flushing protocol or some combination of those mitigation options. And then testing is continued until it is certain that the problem has been resolved. So where we are now, we continue to implement the territory-wide junior kindergarten to 12 school water testing and those remediation solutions. As of today, as Minister Semler mentioned, 13 schools have been tested. Of those 13, results have been analyzed for 8 schools and 6 had public health orders due to elevated lead levels. 4 active orders remain and 1 maintenance and monitoring order remains. There are 2 additional schools that are anticipated to have testing completed before the winter holidays. And that concludes the presentation.
Thank you. I'll turn to committee. Committee has any questions? Start with Mr. McNeely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for the presentation. I'm really confident and glad to see that we're taking our children's learning facility seriously, and actions are underway. And I noticed on the one presentation that the notification is going to be sent out to the local schools, or is the leadership of the community is going to be included in as well? Thank you.
Who's going to take, Ms. Cleveland?
Thank you. And so if I heard the question correctly, it was about the alternative drinking water that has been made available to local schools. So it's up to the education body if they would like to be able to provide alternative drinking water. But what we see as our role is ensuring that they have our full support to do that. And so education bodies are either able to implement that on their own right away. They don't have to reach out to the Department of Education to do that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Cleveland. Do you have a follow-up, Mr. McNeely?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for that reply. I'm just looking at the the website that was mentioned here on slide deck number 9, lead testing in JK to 12 school drinking water here, and the last updated was mentioned December the 5th. That's 5 days ago. Is that going to be routinely updated once a week, every day? Okay, I see some Ned's Haunted. That answered my question. And this seems to be is there a routine maintenance after the school year is completed and we're going into our summer construction maintenance type season? Is each school being checked for the fire alarm system, for the drinking water, for the maintenance of steps, deteriorating access, those types of routine maintenance done on each school after the school year is done? Thank you.
Minister McKay?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I mean, with all the other safety components of the school, your fire alarms and fire extinguishers and stuff like that, they all receive annual inspections, and they're documented with the required work for the fire marshal and everything else. When it comes down to the maintenance of the piping and stuff like that, as the source is found, it's being replaced or repaired to reduce the lead exposure. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. McKay. We'll just do 2 questions on the first round and go to the second round. Mr. MLA Testart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, there were comments made that this is, the results here are not a sign that there's a growing problem, that, this is a Canada-wide issue that we're doing. And I just want to be clear with what I'm hearing from my constituents is that this is, when these announcements are being made, it is shocking to them, it is shocking to their families, it is shocking to educators. the information coming out seems to be novel every time and hits hard. So I don't find those statements very helpful. It is a growing problem because we have to pay to fix it. We have to put in these safeties, we have to safety protocols, we have to inconvenience families, educators, all that kind of stuff. So let's not downplay the fact that this is a significant problem, and we do need to take steps to do it. And I recognize that you are doing that. So it's about whether or not those steps will meet the need and are moving fast enough to deal with it. One of the concerns I've heard from folks is water testing in other contexts does not take months to complete. It takes a few weeks at most. So the concern is, why is it taking so long when we could be testing? We've got a lot of schools to test. There's a lot of uncertainty until they're tested. Why is it taking so much longer than for other tests of water supplies? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Testart. We will take this, Minister McKay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll start and then I'll ask Deputy Minister Maniego to continue on. So I think the answer to that question is the process of testing the water sources. First of all, finding the water source or the area that you want to test, and then the process of going through it. It's not as simple as grabbing a glass of water and sending it off. There is the time to wait. You know, I think you've seen on the one slide, and I think the Deputy Minister explained about the stagnant water, that you needed the water to sit for a few hours in order to test that area, in order to send it out for testing. If it's flowing water, it may take away the lead levels and not actually show true testing levels. So with that, I'll just ask Deputy Minister Maniego to continue on if she has any more to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Minister McKay. Deputy Minister Minago.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I would just add that there's some significant work that needs to be done before the team goes into the community to do the testing, to understand the plumbing system and understand how the circulation of the water works and do the calculations for how much water needs to be flushed out before they can do that stagnant water period. So there's some assessment that needs to be done as well that adds a bit of time to the process.
Thank you, Deputy Minister Minago. Do you have a follow-up, Mr. MLA Testart?
Yes, I do. A two-part follow-up. One is the protocol for testing this water substantially different from the protocols we normally use to test municipal water sources, for example? Because what I'm hearing is that there's a concern that this is taking longer than it is for other processes. So is there something more unique about this that doesn't take place for normal testing of potential contamination of water supplies? And then my second part to that is, in the slide, where's the lead coming from? We heard that the officials are confident that the source of the water, the source of the contamination is building plumbing. What is the source of that confidence? Is it 100% certain that this is in fact where it is coming from? Thank you.
Minister McKay, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So when it comes down to the municipal water testing, those are done at the water treatment facilities, and it's usually a dip testing or a line test from the actual water, stored water that's treated. There's other ways of retrieving that water to test it before it goes out to the pipe system in the communities or trucked out to the communities. But when it comes down into the buildings, they're taking it from the sources of the water usually, and that could be the water fountain, a sink. And then, of course, there's a process behind that too, which is a little bit more complex than what I'm saying. So maybe what I'll do is I'll pass this off to the Deputy Minister just to add on, and I feel maybe there might be another person that can add to this here. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Minister McKay. Deputy Minister Minago.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would agree with the minister. There's the complexity of the system and of the testing of all of the fixtures in the school is what adds to some of that. And sorry, and I lost my train of thought. Sorry.
Can I just add, just to give an sorry.
Go ahead, Minister McKay.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just as an example, and we'll just use Mildred Hall School in Yellowknife. It's not just out of one area that they were looking from water source. There's 26 fixtures that were tested in the school to, find out the levels of lead in the building, and then search the source of the lead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Minister McKay. Are you gonna, Minister Semler?
I can, Shirag, our environmental health officer, chief officer, he's the the technical expert on the actual procedure of why. So, I mean, he could probably explain it in very common as to why it's taking so long, because I think each faucet actually takes the whole process that they have to do. So if we could explain that.
Thank you, Minister.
Excuse me, just a minute. Chief Environmental Health Officer, Mr. Riot, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll explain the difference between the regular testing that happens at the municipal level. So as Minister McKay mentioned that those are done from one location, whereas compared to the schools, depending on how many drinking water fountains, how many sinks are there, and then every single location, 8 hours technician, tier 1, tier 2. So all the locations are multiplied by 3 times now. So as an example of Millet Hall School, 26 location multiplied by 3, those are the numbers of samples are collected. So that adds to the time. Also, we only have one laboratory in NWT, so the Det'anchogh lab. So that also adds a time as the larger number of the samples, it takes them a couple of days to process all those samples. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Riot. We'll go on to, is there any, we'll go to MLA Morgan. Do you have a question?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thanks to the large group of ministers and staff who are with us this evening on such short notice as well, for this important briefing. So I first want to say that I appreciate all the work that's been done to establish these interdepartmental working groups and protocols, and I do think that there is really solid commitment to move forward and address these problems, and that is all encouraging. What is puzzling to me is the timelines, and I think that's what's troubling many people out there in the public as well. I mean, if we go back to when Health Canada changed its drinking water guidelines in 2019, I know many other jurisdictions in Canada right around that time or shortly after, changed their protocols and went to more proactive testing protocols, especially in schools. And my understanding is that there was an interdepartmental working group that was formed at that time within the NWT. However, my guess is that discussion about drinking water guidelines probably were pushed to the side when COVID hit, as many things were, kind of went into the void. But, there's sort of a delay from when there was first awareness that we might need to start doing things differently and testing at the tap, not just testing the sources of the water at the water treatment plants. And then, early this year, at least in the spring, when results started to come out and a lot of concern was expressed, I think I assumed, and many people assumed, that there would be testing over the summer. At least, the highest risk schools, maybe the oldest buildings, would be tested, prior to the school year starting again. We would kind of get this going. And so there was maybe confusion and frustration that didn't quite happen in time, and that this sort of testing protocol just came out in October. And then even then, if the testing was ready to go in October, it's still confusing to people why it's been 2 months and we're just starting to hear now about the results of that testing. I know that, staff just went over a number of the reasons for why sometimes testing can take longer. But I mean, given the long history and timeline, this isn't just, okay, it took an extra few days or an extra few weeks. It seems to have been months and months and months. And I think people are frustrated with the sort of ongoing delays. Or, I mean, there's sometimes there can be excuses and rationales. Oh, we didn't prioritize it. We didn't get to it. But given the considerable alarm that was raised in the spring about this, I think we had assumed that things would be able to move forward and we would get testing results sooner than now. So I wonder if any of the ministers can speak to why there seems to have been these continued delays from, alarms being raised to actually getting the testing results. And I should say too, I understand it can take time once you have some tests that say something's wrong to figure out what fixtures need to be changed. But people at least want to know if there's something wrong, and then you can switch to alternative water sources while you continue to figure out, how to exactly fix it. So I'll leave it there for now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Ms. Cleveland?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I can start, and then I'll turn to Deputy Minister Fulford to see if there's anything that he would like to add. So certainly, in this respect, hindsight is certainly 2020, where we wish we knew then what we certainly know now. At the time, in the beginning of the summer, we were operating with the information that we had at that time. So we had multiple schools here in Yellowknife with elevated lead levels. We immediately addressed and mitigated those specific fixtures to make sure that we were keeping students safe in those schools back in May of this year. And then spent much of the summer with the Department of Infrastructure mitigating those water sources. And then only once the CPHO was able to clear those fixtures was the water restored to those particular fixtures. And at that time, we did not have the clarity that we have today as to how extensive the challenges are in our infrastructure across the territory. We addressed the high rates of or high levels of lead that were in particular fixtures with our preliminary testing. At no point was, the foot taken off the gas, so to speak, because right away the government went into creating the gold standard protocol that we have before us today. And then from there, once we started going through testing with our new protocol and essentially putting that gold standard protocol to use, and as Deputy Minister Maniego explained, that schools were prioritized based on age of infrastructure, age of children, and information that we had in front of us, so that we were working with evidence-based decision making. And once we got into testing of the schools in this school year, and got back positive results, that's where we ended up with added precautionary measures, where it was like, okay, we've seen enough, I've seen enough, and we need to put precautionary measures in that allow us to continue through testing while offering alternative drinking water to staff and students across the territory, so that we can carry out testing that's necessary, while also ensuring that residents of this territory know that we are prioritizing the health and safety of both staff and students. And through yourself, Mr. Chair, if you're comfortable, I'd like to offer the floor to Deputy Minister Fulford as well.
Thank you, Ms. Cleveland. Mr. Fulford, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just a few additional words, and to speak to the original well-intended but not Cadillac version of water testing that we initiated as a department back at the beginning, very end of the 2024. It was intended to do a grab sample and just identify whether there's a sniff of an issue, and the idea there, and frankly, I think as a department we're quite glad that it happened, because it sent us on this path whereby we're now protecting children, teachers, people in schools. But that was initiated because of looking at other jurisdictions who were doing the same thing at the same time. So that was the impetus for this to begin at all, even though it was a stutter step. And as the ministers have explained, we're on a much better and scientific-based path now.
Thank you, Deputy Minister Fulford. Emily Morgan, do you have a follow-up?
Mr. Chair.
Oh, sorry, just a minute. Just a minute, Ms. Morgan.
Okay.
If I
Summer?
may have.
Or Ms. Condola?
Dr.
Dr. Condola?
So with the Health Canada protocol, the recommendation is to do testing when school is in usage. So you can mimic the real life situation. So the recommendation for testing is during September to June and during weekdays. So that when you're stressing out the system and you're looking at actual student usage, you're measuring real time. If you were to test over the summer when everything's stagnated, it wouldn't reflect real life scenario. So I can open up to Chirag and to Celeste, but this is what I've know from the Health Canada protocol. That's the recommended time to test.
And that's why it's delayed. And that's why it's delayed.
Okay, Ms. Morgan, do you have a follow-up?
I do, and and thanks to staff and ministers for those clarifications. That's helpful. We know that young children are most at risk, and we haven't heard much about childcare centers. So some other jurisdictions like Ontario and Manitoba also require lead testing in childcare centers. And for example, in Manitoba, there are grants available to help childcare centers, carry out this testing. I know that the GNBT doesn't own many of the buildings that house childcare centers in the territory, although there may be some GNBT buildings that have early childcare programs in some communities. But is there a plan to require testing of drinking water in early learning childcare centers? And is there any plan to help support centers with buildings that are not owned by the GNBT to get this testing carried out? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Ms. Cleveland, proceed. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I very much appreciate the question from MLA Morgan. Certainly, and the member noted that the GNWT does not own or operate licensed early learning and childcare programs across the territory, but we certainly endeavor to be as supportive as possible of our childcare providers. So we're currently working with jurisdictions across Canada to understand how they're doing the work to support childcare providers within their jurisdictions to ensure that we can also share that best practices information with childcare providers in the Northwest Territories as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Cleveland. Emily Reid, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to the presenters. I'll echo my colleague's statement for coming in at short notice. It's greatly appreciated. To follow up on MLA Morgan's line of questioning, and I do appreciate that the Minister of ECE is looking into those options. I am curious, though, when it comes to buildings that the GNWT does own or operate, you noted in your presentation that after school testing is complete, the GNWT will do a risk assessment to determine which other GNWT buildings must undergo water testing. I'm curious, will health centers and health cabins, hospitals, etc., be prioritized, as those are often areas where children are present? Thank you.
Okay, Deputy Minister Minogue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so the working group is looking at what the risk factors will be to make those decisions as what will be prioritized. Again, very similarly, looking at at-risk populations, age of building, those same similar criteria would then be applied. So areas where there's children, areas where there could be health centers or that sort of thing will all be considered for prioritization over the next few months, and we'll be able to share more as we have that available.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. Emily Reid, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. A quick one. Is it Is it really that complicated that it will take several months to identify GNWT buildings where youth are present? I can't assume there would be dozens and dozens of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily Reid. Deputy Minister Minogue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We will prioritize them within all of the GNWT buildings, and so it's because we're looking at all of the buildings to make sure we have those prioritized. We're taking the time to make sure that we have everything identified, the ones that have children in them, all of that stuff, so that we can make sure we have that plan ready to go. As we wrap up the schools, we can move seamlessly into the next phase.
Thank you, Deputy Minister Maniego. We'll go to Emily Hawkins. Do you have a question?
I do, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. My question starts with the what type of communication are you doing with parents, in particular to specific schools, communicating when your test results were initiated, when they were sent to the evaluators, once the Department of Health, I assume, would have received them back, and when was that communicated to the Department of Education? And then, of course, the last piece, when is that communicated to the staff, students, and parents? Yeah, do you have that information, and is it publicly available to parents? Because they're very concerned about the lag and timelines between testing and communication from health, and the time lag between health and ECE, and of course, to the parents and end users and family members that are very concerned about these extremely serious health issues that can cause lasting lifetime disabilities as well as other types of problems. Parents are worried about this. Thank you.
I'll start and then I'll pass, Mr. Chair.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Cleveland.
I'll start and then I'll pass to the Deputy Minister who can, because there was a lot of request for kind of the detail of all of the pieces, but I'll start just to say that transparency is our #1 goal. In this, we want to ensure that as soon as information is received from the CPHO as far as orders, that we are immediately communicating that to our education bodies so that they can take mitigation measures that they need to that are appropriate for the results that are found. And from there, it's our education bodies that are communicating to their family members that they have direct contact with on a regular basis. From there, Mr. Chair, through yourself, I'd like to pass to the Deputy Minister that can kind of take the member through all the detailed steps of that. Thank you.
Yeah, Deputy Minister Fulford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple other steps there, and there are a series of steps that we follow and we endeavor to replicate each time, because when you have a path that you can follow, it makes it easier and less, chance of any error. So that's what we've worked out in this case. So we start off before any testing with talking with the education body and arranging a time to go in and test the school so that people don't see folks running around doing testing without knowing what's going on. So those tests and the tests that are taken over a couple of days, that there's protocols for how they're handled. They have to go to a lab. The lab test results go to, I believe, infrastructure and CPHO. They analyze them, determine whether there's a risk level and what mitigations might be necessary because of that risk level. ECE gets involved again when it comes to communicating with the ed bodies. We assist them by drafting template letters for them to inform their parents. So there's a whole series of steps to make sure that everyone has support along the way, that the protocol is followed, and that we're not ending up taking tests that have to be retaken. So, and I don't know whether any of the others at the table might want to add to that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hawkins, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. I would hope that information is publicly available and not left up to parents to have to research this in particular on their individual basis who might not have the skills, time, patience, or even abilities to do this. This is a frustrating process. The next question really is built around liability. all three departments must have taken a bit of a look at the types of liability the GNWT is now exposed to. I mean, ultimately, it's these are at large. I'm just going to say I'm not sure every single unit is, but I would say at large, most of these are GNWT owned assets. And I'm curious on what type of liability may be exposed and what type of risks, as well as what's being communicated again to parents. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hawkins. Ms. Cleveland, Minister Cleveland.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'll start by answering the first couple of questions of MLA Hawkins, and then I'll pass to one of my colleagues for the liability piece there. In regards to information and how other ways that it is accessible, yes, our first point of contact is to education bodies, because our goal is to ensure that we're going right to the source right away, and also enlisting our education partners in the critical role that they play in public communications as well. From there, Mr. Chair, we do public service announcements when an order is issued from the Chief Public Health Officer. Those go out publicly through our newsroom from the GNWT. They have been consistently picked up as well by CBC as well as Cabin Radio. And then we also have a web page. So if anybody types into their search engine on the internet, NWT school water testing, generally the first link that pops up is to ECE's water testing web page, where we have every piece of documentation that we've put out. So that includes all of our public service announcements. It includes our water testing protocol, where people can click on a link and go right to our protocol. It also includes a schedule of the schools that are next up, as well as what schools have already been done and the mitigation measures that are in place if required for any of those. So we wanted to have everything that has to do with water testing that anybody's heard about over the last 6 months readily available on that web page. And so it's a really good resource for people to access, to know what's going on, what we're doing, and what comes next. And may I pass through yourself, Mr. Chair, to Deputy Minister Fulford.
Deputy Minister Fulford, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm a lawyer, and I can tell you that we're not concerning ourselves with liability right now. Our focus is 100% on getting the testing done and the results in. If liability becomes an issue, and we'll deal with it then. It's prioritization of the safety of students and staff in the schools and the public. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. MLA Jericon, do you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the minister and your team for providing us with a presentation here today on this very important issue. In the Tune the Ability riding, I got 4 schools, and we also have the highest cancer rates probably out of all the Northwest Territories. Also, we have probably the highest funerals in our riding as well that I've been involved in and attended. But I just want to back up a little bit here. In your report, you talk about Health Canada guidelines. You talk about 0.01 milligrams of lead per liter, and then it was increased to 0.005 milligrams per liter, and that was in 2019. I guess my question, I'm really concerned now that the schools you say that's 3 to 68 years old, and it's only now showing up on our radar. And but the thing is that I'm curious as to how we got to this point as a government. The reason I say that is because if this pipe soldering was banned in 1986, and here we are in 2014, the brass fixtures itself was also banned. So I'm just curious as to what method is the infrastructure or your government are doing to inspect these schools, making sure they're safe. My question is around the fire marshal, and what kind of tools does he have in his tool chest because a lot of these schools are designed, they all have to be approved by the fire marshal as well. So my question is, where is the oversight here? Who's overseeing the inspections and going back all the way, say even 68 years ago? Here we are, it shows up on the radar, and now here we are questioning ourselves as to how we got here, but then we find two issues, is copper and brass fixture. So how is the inspection done? Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Jericon? Mr. McKay?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think there's different levels of standards there. So when you're speaking about the fire marshal's office and the fire marshal, they're dealing with more of fire safety related stuff within buildings. When you're dealing with the plumbing, you're dealing with the plumbing inspector and the building inspectors for that time. Keeping in mind that a lot of these buildings that were built a long time ago were meeting a different standards of development and building back then compared to today's building standards. And we're also talking about the breakdown of pipe and breakdown of solder over that amount of time. So it may not have showed it initially, but now we're at a time where there's material breakdown and some of this testing is starting to show up now. So I wouldn't say that it's a neglect from 60 years ago, as you were mentioning, but more so that we're starting to acknowledge some of these pipes that may have had solder from way back when, and going back to check these facilities out in order to test them and do the proper testing procedures to find out where the actual source is. And I believe there is another member that would like to speak to this. No? Anybody else wanted to add? No? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McKay, Mr. Jericon, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Now that we know we're in this situation with the problems with the drinking water, and going forward, my concern is that how do we prevent this from happening again? Whether at the end of the day, the fire marshal has the final say on occupancy of any public buildings. And that includes everybody that's involved on public buildings, on electrical, plumbing, and heating, etc. So I guess, do we need to strengthen our legislation to make sure that proper inspections are done on an annual basis, so that we could catch this a lot earlier on older buildings, particular my school in Det'anchogh, it's one of the oldest buildings around, and I'm deeply concerned about the students that are now affected by this lead that's been found in the water. So my question to you is do we need stronger legislation to address this issue and proper methods in terms of inspections? Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Jericon? Mr. McKay?
Sorry, I was waiting for the red light to come on there. Legislation, I wouldn't particularly say. I don't believe we do. I think part of the issue is like it's not just the legislation. We also have to keep in mind that we're dealing with older buildings, we're dealing with older infrastructure. So we're doing the testing. So the testing's being done, and when we're finding out the problems, we're starting to mitigate it, starting to repair the piping, and Department of Infrastructure is looking at a lot of the facilities that are GNWT owned now and starting to build that practice into the other facilities coming up. There's different layers here. You're mentioning the fire marshal's office doing the occupancy load. The occupancy load is based on not just him, but based on the other inspectors also meeting the safety requirements at that time. So that, I think, keep that in mind, is that it's at that time, not at 60 years ago or 30 years ago, that type of thing, right? So, I wouldn't say that we're following today's standards, if that makes sense. Thank you. Oh, and Dr. Cami Candola would like to add more information, please.
Dr. Condola,
Thank
proceed.
you. So just wanted to clarify with lead exposure specifically, it hasn't been linked to increasing cancers, but it mainly has been impacts behavior and intellectual development. And for adults, what they notice is heart disease, increased blood pressure, kidney disease, infertility, and also memory decline or loss. But specifically with cancer, not linked, but there are other contaminants like arsenic that are linked to cancer. But I just want to clear that for the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Condola. MLA Morse, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, the first question I want to ask is just building upon one of the questions asked by Emily Morgan. In response to Emily Morgan's question about other childcare facilities, given that children under the age of 6 have a higher risk of health effects from lead, the minister responded that we're talking to other jurisdictions about how they are managing this issue. I guess what I would ask is, why are we simply focusing on schools and GNWT-based infrastructure and not doing a similar building age-based risk assessment for buildings that contain a large number of children, particularly young children, and prioritizing those buildings for testing regardless of who owns them? I mean, I think the issue here is risk mitigation, acting based on evidence. And so we have evidence that tells us that younger children are at most risk. So why not prioritize based on that? I mean, I do recognize that schools are an obvious place because they contain children, but I'm just wondering why we're not kind of taking wider action, considering the next point that I wanted to make, which is that it seems likely that building age is the determining factor here. And so there may be a number of childcare facilities that meet those risk factors for building age. And so we should be prioritizing those, because what I don't want to see us happening is be shocked 2 years from now when we go to test those buildings. It shouldn't be shocking if those buildings meet the criteria. Like, we should just be aware that there's a risk there and that it needs to be mitigated. So can the minister comment on how we're dealing with that? Thank you.
Thank you, MLA Morse. Minister McKay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So that is the plan going forward. So as GNWT assets, the age of the building is prioritized, and then also the occupancy of the building is prioritized. So those together is making the priority list of what buildings are being tested first. And just to add to that, I mean, there's other buildings out there, including private residents, that could fall under this. We don't own those buildings, certain buildings require fire extinguishers. We don't pay for those fire extinguishers. So there's different responsibilities out there. And as a GNWT, we're looking after our current assets and then assisting others as we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister McKay. MLA Morse, do you have a follow-up?
Thank you. I thought maybe another minister might weigh in on that question as well. Just again, noting the child, and maybe they can clarify in response to my next question before answering it. It seemed to me like we are doing a bunch of testing on schools and then we're going to move on to other buildings. Can I just get confirmation as to whether things are being done concurrently based on the age of children occupying the building and the level of risk based on the age of the building? So that's a clarifying question, but I still have a second question to ask.
Thank you, MLA Morse.
And sorry,
Minister Cleveland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, and what I'm hearing is MLA Morse is asking the same question, but to another minister, and my answer is going to be the same as the Minister of Infrastructure. The schools are the first up based on the age of the infrastructure and the age of the occupants, those using the buildings. And so what people will notice is that our schools that have younger students in them are going first. So that is what is making up kind of the biggest prioritization of that matrix. And from there, as the Deputy Minister and Minister have outlined already, that they will be kind of with that same matrix going forward with other GNWT infrastructure. if the member is asking about infrastructure that's not owned by the GNWT but may have younger occupants in it. As I said before, we certainly don't do that testing of private residences or private businesses within the Northwest Territories, but given our direct linkage to our daycares and our day homes in the Territory, are certainly collecting information to ensure we can share best practices with our partners in that field. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister Cleveland. Mr. Morse, do you have a follow-up?
Thank you. And yeah, what I was hoping to get is whether, like, I don't know, it sounds like GNWT kind of has a testing team that's going around. What I was wondering if they would provide this service to the buildings that are at highest risk, regardless of who owns them. So that's really what I was trying to get at, is not that we're just gonna, like, there may be childcare facilities in the NWT with children who are in the highest risk category, so children who are under the age of 6. Those buildings, I think, should be prioritized, regardless of who owns them, for testing. That's what I was trying to get at. So I think the next question that I have relates to it anyways. And so the next question I had was, as staff have noted, age of buildings appears to be the significant determining factor here for whether the building is going to contain lead. So I'm glad they're prioritizing older buildings in their own infrastructure. But it seems fair to conclude that any buildings built prior to 2014, and particularly 1990, have a fairly high likelihood for exceeding guidelines under certain conditions. So has the health department considered releasing general testing requirements, mitigation guidance, and best practices generally across the NWT? Because I think it's quite obvious that this problem is going to extend beyond schools and GNWT-owned buildings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morse. Dr. Gondola?
So on our website, we do provide lead and health recommendations from the source would be Health Canada. We, for people of private dwellings that are older, we do recommend testing. You can test, but that would have to be privately done. And while people are waiting for testing, there are mitigation measures people can do that we have put on the web, such as running their water in the morning or using, flushing their system first thing in the morning, such as running the dishwasher, taking a shower, not using hot water for cooking because that can leach lead, cleaning their aerators. But by all means, we recommend, just like with radon, we do recommend people, though the buildings should test, and we should be more explicit and provide more explicit information. So we'll take that to heart, but there are precautionary measures people can take right now while they're arranging for testing.
Thank you, Dr. Condola. I got, I'll squeeze in a question here. What is the time frame for when the water should be tested? When is it collected? Where is it collected within the communities? I know I worked at the water treatment plant in Aklavik, and there were several locations within the community that it was collected. When is it collected, and where is it collected from? And where is the water tested? Is it sent to Yellowknife in a certain time frame, like within 24 hours? Does it have to be at the testing location? And how is it communicate? How is the findings communicated to the community? Minister McKay?
Sorry, I'll try that. It sounded like there was a bunch of questions in there that rambled into a few, so I'll try to answer them all. So, in communities, the water treatment facilities, they have dip testing or line testing that they do out of the reservoir or out of the holding tanks to test. And then for in the buildings, a lot of it will come from water fountains, your faucets, your wherever you're getting your water sources from within the buildings. And there's multiple locations within buildings. Like I said earlier, like one school, for an example, is 26 sources. So there could be multiple sources in a building on where you're getting your water samples from. For testing sites, I don't know the actual site. I'd have to get the deputy minister to answer that. I don't know the actual location of where the result or the products being sent to for testing, so, thank you.
Deputy Minister Nago.
Thank you. The testing is done here in Yellowknife at the Taiga Lab.
Okay, what's the, one other question I had was, once the water is collected, how long does that be here within 24 hours?
That,
Go ahead, Minister McKay.
that I don't know for details.
We can ask Mr. Rohit online. He may have that information.
Mr. Rothait?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Yes, so depending on what kind of tasting it's happening, so the municipal systems have daily tasting, weekly tasting, quarterly tasting, and annual tasting. It's all under the Water Supply System Regulation and the Public Health Act. So it's quite of a thorough system. Depending on which type of the tasting happening, it needs to get to the lab. So for the community, assuming you said Fort McPherson, so some of the communities do have a small incubator in the water treatment plant. So the weekly tasting can be done in the treatment plant. The annual tasting, which includes 28 different parameters, including lead, that's sent to Tiger Lab. Tiger Lab likes to have samples within 24 hours, but there's a little bit of leeway that it can take up to 1 to 2 days, and the tastes are still valid.
Okay, thank you. I'll get into my second follow-up. Clavik has one of the older schools in the NWT, and I've been in that facility, and there's a lot of things going on there. What kind of measures have been taken to assure the school, its occupants, and the community that there is measures taken to ensure that the school is in safe standings? Ms. Cleveland, Minister Cleveland.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'll start, and then I'll see if any of my colleagues want to add in. So we are being very solutions-oriented as far as how we're going about this with our science-based guidelines and protocol. From there, we're being transparent with our communication, making sure that we're reaching out to the education body right away so that they can communicate with families, and also ensure that any mitigation that needs to happen right away is happening, so that we as a team can prioritize the safety of staff and students. And in addition to that, we've introduced an added layer of precaution, which is any education body can introduce alternative water while they wait to go through the testing and any potentially required mitigation for their fixtures or their faucets that might be required. Through yourself, Mr. Chair, is there anybody else that wants to add into that? No. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. We have a hard stop at 9 o'clock, so we'll go into our second round of questions. Mr. Testard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this testing protocol started off poorly with a 4-month delay in reporting the results of potential contaminated drinking water to parents and educators. And there were 0 consequences for this, by the way. What is important here, I think, is restoring public confidence that our kids are safe at school, because I can tell you from the reaction I hear from parents, and I am one of those parents with kids in our schools, so I talk to them all the time, is that confidence is not there. And we need to do more than just what we're doing now. So to that end, Ontario has had a Safe Drinking Water Act for at least 23 years, school testing regulations for at least 18 years. Will the minister bring forward legislation however it's done, but will the minister bring forward legislation or regulation that will require routine testing of schools based on conditions like age, and routine regular flushing protocols as well to ensure this never happens again? Thank you.
Thank you, Malia Testort. Minister Cleveland?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I am one of those parents as well. I share the concern of MLA Test Start as well as other families, parents, staff across the territory. Immediately, as soon as this came to my attention, we went through an independent investigation because it was very important to me that we understood both as cabinet and as a government where we fell short and what we needed to do to make sure that this didn't happen again. We are following the recommendations of that investigation. We have now a gold standard testing protocol that is no longer a pilot. It is a regular testing program that has been implemented by our asset maintainers, who is the Department of Infrastructure. I hear what the member is saying as far as do we put this into legislation? That is certainly a conversation that we as legislators will have to have as a team. But that would not be a piece of legislation that would be in an Education Act. It would have to fall into a piece of legislation, for example, like a Public Safety Act. So I think that is especially considering that this does not only impact schools. You know, we're talking about childcare facilities, we're talking about health centers, and so I think it's important that we have a broad approach to this and make sure that we're ensuring the safety of residents no matter what building that they may be in. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Cleveland. Do you have a follow-up, Mr. MLA Testart?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree. It's not just schools. It's all childcare facilities that deal with young kids. So, to that end, can we then at least get it? Well, sorry. I mean, I don't know why we need to discuss this as a team. It seems like putting this into regulation would be a good first step, even if it's, or put it into policy. That, not policy though. Like, we need to make sure this is something that people are well aware that is in place, is going to continue, is transparent, all the things you've said. I'm saying they don't believe you currently because these issues keep coming up. Maybe belief's not the right word, but I'm saying that the confidence has been shaken and you need to do more. You need to do more than just what you're doing with this protocol. And that's why I say legislation's the next logical step. If we're worried about childcare centers, as other members have raised, can we get a commitment tonight that all childcare centers will be tested? I don't care how it gets done, whether it's GWT owned, privately owned, whatever, whether we provide grants, bursaries, subsidies, whatever. Can we guarantee that that will happen tonight? Because that is a concern as well. And we have no clarity on whether or not that will happen, when it will happen, and if we can ensure the water supplies for those childcare centers are safe as well. Thank you.
Thank you, MLA Testart. Minister Cleveland.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I agree with the member that we need to make sure that we're supporting the sector. What that support looks like is yet to be determined. I do want to be very clear on that I'm working with other jurisdictions to determine what they are finding as best practices, given that this is also people's private homes. Potentially, that might look like, for example, legislation like the member is talking about and requirements of regular testing where facilities where young children are, but we need to make sure as well that we have access to that testing and those types of testing protocols, because we're not just talking, for example, about Yellowknife, we're talking about 33 different communities. And so making sure that whatever program and expectation we put in place is something that we can action and can support across the territory is going to be really important. So making sure we have our ducks in a row is going to be vitally important to this. I do feel like I'm a little bit out of my depth here because we are definitely not the testing department. So I want to open it up to my colleagues to see if anybody else wants to weigh in. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cleveland. Emily McNeely, do you have a second round?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is on testing and the final stages of approval. So my question is to the Public Health Office here. I suspect part of your protocol would be to identify the building that you're testing. These buildings, as we said, are old and some of them have anywhere from galvanized piping to copper piping to plastic piping. So I suspect part of your inventory, let's take the oldest school in the Sahtu, for example, and a Clavik. When I'm doing the test here for that building, I'm actually taking into account the inventory. When I look at the water going into the building, it's going through the system, and there's different stages that water is traveling, and including the holding tank. So when you're saying you're gonna flush the system out and test it and make sure it's, it's clean, then deem it complete or certified or inspected. So part of your checking process and flushing would be also, will it be also categorizing the piping system in that building that I just tested? There is galvanized steel from this section to this section, and from this section it's copper piping, and we added a new addition on in today's standards, it's all plastic piping. So there's plastic piping in addition to that floor plan. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think I'm trying to.
Minister Semler?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to be clear, the role of the Office of the Chief Public Health Office is to review the result and analyze the result, and they're not the ones doing the testing. The testing and all of that sits within infrastructure, so that I would redirect that question over to infrastructure.
Minister McKay?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So a lot of this stuff, when it comes down to testing these facilities, there's a lot of pre-planning work that has to be done. Part of that is, and from what I'm told from the department, it can take up to 3 days of pre-planning on a facility prior to the testing being done. And part of that is, trying to locate different types of materials, as the MLA is speaking of. So, your galvanized holding tanks, to your PVC piping, to your brass piping and soldering areas, or areas that are soldered together in the elbows and everything. So that this is all part of the pre-planning and all part of the staging, getting ready for the actual test. So, and even then, at that point, there's different types of testing that they're doing, right? And so, yeah, I mean, it's not as easy as, like I said earlier, as just picking a day, going up to it and pouring a glass of water out of the sink. And there's a little bit of prep work that has to be done for all this type of testing. So I don't know if the Deputy Minister Maniego would like to add anything? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Minister McKay. Mr. Emily McNeely, you got a follow-up?
Actually, I don't there, Mr. Chair. I think all the questions that I had have been covered by myself and our colleagues. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Emily McKay. McNeely. Emily Hawkins, do you have a second round?
I do, Mr. Chair, please, and thank you. My question really is, I'm going to have to ask the department to clarify the numbers, but with respect to the age of the buildings, I think we're talking like between 3 years of the newest, and I think someone said something to the range of 60. I mean, the exact year isn't so much the problem per se for the question, but my understanding is these lead fittings, sorry, my apologies, these fittings with lead that exceed the guidelines are older than the some of the schools. Does that not help cause any worry or concern in there anywhere? And would that not point to the fact that somewhere a plumbing company has installed something of that concern? I mean, and on top of that, would that not necessarily cause you to investigate the construction if it's a continuous pattern that, say, XYZ Plumbing did these last 10 buildings in their schools, or interestingly enough, those are the ones we're seeing high levels of lead. I mean, is that type of analysis on? And just to clarify, if you could make sure it's crystal clear, the year the lead concerned fittings were banned and phased out, in contrast to the most recent schools built. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily Hawkins. Minister McKay?
Yeah, thank you. Maybe what I'll do is I'll pass this off to Deputy Minister Maniego for some of the question there, because she has the documents in front of her. Thank you.
Deputy Minister Maniego?
Thank you. So the brass fixtures, the change to low lead plumbing fixtures was in 2014, and the solder was the change was in 1986, although it wasn't actually published till 1990. So that those are the years that the changes were made. In terms of some fixtures that may have been installed more recently, unfortunately, they look the same, and so you can't tell by looking at them whether or not it may be an older or have higher lead in it. And so there are occasions where spare parts were pulled in and may have been added in after the fact to a newer school, or repairs were made that may have been a reuse of solder that shouldn't have been. And so that is something that we are looking at in terms of all of our processes. We are making sure now that and have been for a while, not to make sure that those are not in the supply chain for repairs, maintenance of schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister Minago. Mr. MLA Hawkins, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just before the follow-up comment, which is I would be suggesting more than just looking at it. I mean, that could be a serious liability if somebody's using something that is not legal to use in that context. And that, I mean, given the significant disabilities that are tied to lead and children and the lifetime complications. Mr. Chairman, often I've heard answers all about the ECNE does this, but it comes down to the school board. Is there not one consistent message, given the fact that the school boards and districts are all creatures of the Department of Education? And I'm not suggesting stepping in and plowing through them and disregarding their board and their governance model, but I would say that wouldn't it make more sense that we have a true consistent messaging, considering the overall department is responsible for this? Because I think it would be nice to see consistency, clarity, and the fact that it's this types of information and professionalism that people would like to hear in schools, in public occasions and opportunities, that they could actually get this type of information one-on-one. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily Hawkins. Minister Cleveland.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the member for the question. So education is the lead on communication with education bodies. We have largely, to the extent that we can, standardized our communication with education bodies. So it's not something that has a tremendous amount of lag time on our end. We're able to put information together as quickly as possible, and make sure that we're distributing that to education bodies. From there, the Department of Education, Culture and Employment also supports education bodies with the communication that it sends out to families. So if it's looking for assistance on putting that letter together that it sends out to families, and I can say as a parent, I've received information from my child's school on this topic. And so we're working hard to make sure that we're respecting the autonomy of education bodies while still giving them every support that we can as a department to ensure that consistency. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Cleveland. Next we have Emily Jericho. Do you have a second round questions?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Given that you told us about what Health Canada standards are in terms of drinking water, we're talking about testing the water and see how safe it is, etc. My question would be, I guess, is that, we already are providing water to the schools throughout the Northwest Territories. And I also assume that all the bottled water that's coming from the south to the schools also have aging infrastructure as well. And I'm a little concerned as well, is that I'm not sure if you guys are testing the bottled water as they come in from the south or here. The other thing is that my question is, how safe is the bottled water drinking that comes to the schools here in the Northwest Territories? Can maybe Dr. Candola or somebody tell me about that? Because the water bottles are here, it's in the community, the kids are drinking it, the students are drinking it, the teachers are drinking it. have you guys tested those waters? Thank you.
Sorry, Dr. Condola.
Dr. Condola, go ahead.
Sorry, and then I'll ask Sharad to jump in. So on our website, what we recommend in terms of, is that there has to be an accredited certified, water source that is, certified to remove lead. And then for older buildings, there's another intervention people can use is, using a source, filtration device, but it has to be accredited and it has to, be credited to remove lead. So if you're, obtaining water not from an accredited source, then, they could be lead. And so it's really important that you know where exactly you're getting the source of water and what's being tested and what can be removed. And I will move it over to my drinking water expert, Chirag. But that was an excellent question, Richard, because it is correct. You can't just get any source of water. You have to get an accredited source.
Chirag Rehat, would you like to make a comment?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'll explain. So the bottled water that's coming to grocery stores or something are regulated by the Health Canada and the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. So they are regulated to the Canadian standard that includes the lead content in the drinking water. So just like any other food that comes to the grocery store, it's basically the bottled water is regulated as a food product. And apart from that, we do whenever we recommend people on our website and other places, we say that if you are installing a filter in your home, whether it's under the sink or other kind of filters, they need to be certified to a national safety standard. So there's a standard called 53 and 42. So those are standards, NSF standards. If the product are certified by those standards, they will remove the lead from the drinking water.
Thank you, Mr. Rohit. MLA Jerkon, do you have a second question?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman. Well, thank you for that reply, because I've been thinking about that, the water and that's coming to our schools, et cetera, and I'm a little concerned about that. But I want to come back to your reply, but before I do that, I just want to say that I know how to fix the problem in Det'anchogh with the water problem we're having there. And I know we got $1.752 billion in our budget and our overdraft that we approved in March of this year. And I know it's Christmas, and I'm hoping that we could find at least $375,000 needed to do a school assessment. So we definitely need a new school in Det'anchogh. But my final question will be is that who's policing the water that comes in from the south? And how is it, are we testing those waters to make sure they're safe for the school, the children, and the staff? Thank you.
Thank you, MLA Jerkon. Minister Similar?
Yeah, I believe all of the, as Mr. Rohit said, all bottled water is inspected through Health Canada, Food and Regulation Inspector. So everything that's purchased, sold within our grocery stores, and I believe that's the water that's being purchased for the schools or has to follow those, and they police that. I mean, that's all regulations in Canada. Like when you have those health regulations, that's federal legislation that inspect that.
Thank you, Minister Similar. MLA Morse, do you have a second round? Mr. Morse.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Chair, was that me that you were calling on?
Yes. Do you have a second round of questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I thought you said Morgan. I do have a second round of questions. I wanted to just focus on, the Health Canada guidelines were set in 2019, and it seems clear to me that it's up to our health department or the CPHO. It's not entirely clear which aspect of it to determine how to implement those guidelines and deal with it. So I found it a bit peculiar that the ECE minister is fielding questions on potential for legislation, how this issue will be managed in a wider sense. So I'm just wondering if the health minister or CPHO has thoughts on other jurisdictions. As Mr. Testart noted, Ontario has legislation addressing this issue. And I'm wondering if the health department or the CPHO perhaps together are considering this issue and how they're going to respond to it in a wider sense. Because there's been a fair bit of concern raised tonight about buildings outside of GNWT's purview. It's pretty obvious to me that this goes beyond schools. So I'm curious to hear from the health minister or CPHO on that.
Mr. Simler?
Yeah, thank you. As part of this, and I can, at this point, we are not, and I think the reason why, and as Deputy Minister Fulford said, that the lead testing and this type of testing falls under the Public Safety Act, and therefore this initiative was, I think it was started within ECE as a part of a school testing initiative that across Canada, and as this has arisen, this is where the Office of the Chief Public Health Officer is pulled in, as it's her role in order to issue the orders based on the results of these tests. I can turn it over to Dr. Candola to kind of explain how the role in our area is and where legislation could lie under, if I may, Mr. Chair.
So,
Go ahead, Dr. Candola.
so in our legislation, we do specifically have legislation for drinking water, but it's directed to the water suppliers, so it would be with the municipalities, local communities, places that have drinking water systems, such as the mines, camps. So this is where we have regulations on testing, bacterial, chemical testing, but specifically for daycares, we do not regulate. Once the water leaves that source, we will investigate elevated lead as a health hazard, but we don't regulate it in our regulations. However, we do recommend, just like with radon, we would recommend, if you have an older building, especially if you have a younger population, it would be recommended to make sure that that individual tests, but it would not be, it's a recommendation, it's not in my regulation per se. And I can ask Chirag Rohit, my chief EHO, to add to this, but there's a distinction between those who supply drinking water versus those who have buildings, that have fixtures or piping that may be leaching lead. So our jurisdiction ends at the supply scenario. Chirag?
Chirag, Reid, do you have anything to add?
Sure. I think Minister Sandler and Dr. Kandola covered most of the items. And again, from the regulator perspective, drinking water safety in NWT is a shared responsibility. So we as a public health do regulate the source, making sure that water, when it's leaving from those treatment systems, are safe and meeting the Canadian guidelines. Once it gets to individual homes or individual buildings, we rely on the owners and other regulators who share the responsibility in making sure that 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 water that's safe coming out of the drinking water system remains safe throughout the process. And again, there's all sort of requirements in terms of private properties and rights of individuals. So those do play into the fact, and regulating individual home might not be the appropriate way within the Public Health Act.
Mr. Rohit, MLA Morris, do you have a follow-up?
Thank you. I appreciate the answers, and I guess maybe I shouldn't target a specific minister. I think what I'm trying to get at here is just, at least one other province has determined that it is worth regulating that schools test for lead, and maybe we could extend that to childcare facilities. So I'm just wondering if someone at GNWT is looking at the advisability of testing for this, considering how much of an issue it's become here. Considering the risk factors in the NWT with the edge of buildings, it just seems to me like at least investigating the issue and coming back and determining how to deal with it would be advisable. I do want, considering I only have one other question, to ask this question because it hasn't been asked tonight. I'm curious to hear from the CPHO her opinion as to how concerned people should be, because there's been a fair bit of communication of concern tonight. The people are suggesting families are shocked, there's fear. There was a number of risks kind of communicated by MLAs, but I'd like to hear from the CPHO herself. Considering tests have shown so far no indication of anyone from affected schools testing above the norms, is this something people should be really concerned about? Should they be fearful for their child's safety? From a public health perspective and from your perspective as a public health expert and advisor, is this something that people should be particularly concerned about? Because I'm hearing we're taking a very serious response to this with relation to schools. I'm also hearing that they're not even considering legislation which might mandate testing. So there seems to be a little bit of mixed messaging in that sense. And I'm just curious to get a bit more information on the record about how much of a concern this really is.
Thank you, MLA Morris. Dr. Condola.
So Canada took a proactive step in 2019 by reducing their maximal acceptable concentrations for lead from 10 parts per billion to 5 parts per billion, and we were one of the most proactive. What we have seen in terms of, we've been, not just with the schools, we have had, in NWT, we have had a health effects monitoring program since 2017 that have tested over 2,000 adults and children, and we've been checking, initially with a urinary screen, we have been testing for lead, for arsenic, for mercury, and what we found is that there's been very little tests that have come back positive with the urinary sample, which is just a screen, but when it's been followed up with blood lead levels, we haven't met any guidance that would exceed public health intervention. And that was before we started to see an increase in lead levels in the school. Since the lead level public health orders came out in May, we have opened up for testing, specifically in Yellowknife. You can do a callback and request blood lead level testing. We have received 46 results, mainly in young populations. And again, we haven't seen any elevated levels that would cause concern for public health action. However, we do know that that children under 6 are particularly vulnerable. They have a higher absorption of lead than the general population, and we strongly recommend that people who are for early childhood, it would be a strong recommendation that they get tested if they're dealing with a vulnerable population. So we agree with this recommendation. It's just at this point we don't regulate. We can't mandate or force these daycare operators to test their water supply, especially if it's an older building, but we can share best practices, and we can provide best practices that Health Canada and other expert bodies have done for specifically targeting early childhood. But at this moment, it is not, again, in our regulations, or do we mandate it. So that's pretty much, we do say if parents are concerned, because when you look at, when you're looking at lead level exposures, you have to look at the concentration of water they're drinking, the, how much water they're drinking, and the age. And what we find in schools is that there are not being exposed at a level where it's reflecting in their blood lead levels. And so we do know that there are other sources of lead that people can be taking. So the best way for parents who are concerned is to make that appointment and get an individual risk assessment and explain to the healthcare provider what their concerns are, and then have the child tested. This is the best way to allay parental concerns, and pretty much all the lead levels have come back not requiring any public health intervention.
Thank you, Dr. Condola. We're at about 11 more minutes before 9 o'clock with a hard stop. Finished our second round. Is there any questions for the third round?
I have a couple
MLA
quick questions.
MLA Hawkins, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very quick. We're doing a lot of talking about process and whatnot, but the question I have is, how much does the testing cost from the sort of government side? In other words, what does it cost to go check the water and do a sort of full 360 cost on that? The other thing is how difficult is it for the public health folks to get into the schools and voluntarily help support parents and children, and including staff of schools, to do testing for anybody who wants? Because I mean, we talk about, oh, we'll just go sign up for a test, call your local doctor, good luck on that. So is there a way to maybe actually get down on the ground, into the ground of schools, and support people? And the other question was about the cost. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily Hawkins. Minister McKay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the just testing itself is pretty reasonable. It's about $1,500 per school. The added cost is obviously depending on location of the school. It could be travel, could be accommodations, could be equipment required, plus all the shipping of materials and anything else. So there could be depending on the location, obviously the different amounts of costs for the type of testing that needs to be done. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister McKay. We'll go to a quick follow-up from Mr. Emily Hawkins. Oh, Mr. Emily Hawkins, just a minute. Minister Simler?
Yeah, I just want to answer the piece on when this first began. I know that the specifically to Yellowknife, because that's where the first preliminary test came in that had levels of lead, and so Yellowknife has a contact primary care by completing the callback request form and selecting the primary care regarding the public health order, and that therefore they can request to have a callback to get appointments to have blood work and an assessment done by a practitioner through that process, and that was streamlined for this, and that's still available for those in Yellowknife. However, more than now, what we have, within other areas there, depending on which community you live in, you can always contact your healthcare provider and go through the same process. However, you just book the appointment, get the lab work, do the assessment, and get done in that community. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Simler. Mr. Hawkins, your final question?
Yep, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to be clear, I'm suggesting health get into the schools like the old days. They did the vaccination for the kids. They show up for, tour days or whatnot. Obviously, don't show up in the morning and tell people you're there. Tell them in advance. and say, hey, if anyone wants their kids, bring in the form, have it signed, and we'll run them through the process of getting tested very quickly so then parents can get results without having to do that process, like the old immunization, vaccinations, etc. That is really showing the government is getting in on the ground. And so that's the suggestion. The last question is, could they talk about if you're a parent, we heard one minister say, oh, I received letters, but the problem is people like me, I'm an old guy, and that means I have old kids, and my old kids are now adults, which means they've gone to these schools, but I won't be receiving letters. And it's not just about me, but it's about people who have gone through the system who will never receive letters. I guess the question is like, how do we have any idea on how many people this may have impacted? At the same time, Mr. Chairman, and the last part is what do parents watch for? As a parent of children, and I know some of my colleagues have children here, so they understand, something's different with your kid. It may not have happened overnight, but that said, something may seem off. So, from a parent speaking for parents, something that jumps out of mind is about noticing your child's a little different from some odd reason. And it's not because they're being silly, it's because something's out of sync. So could you talk about the signs as well as maybe the suggestion? Thank you.
Who's going to take the lead on this? Minister Simler?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, and I appreciate the suggestion. However, the assessment needs to be done with a clinician, and then within that, the assessment with the clinician based on the exposure, that is when that clinician will make the decision on the need for the testing. And so it's not something that we would just go into the school, get a consent form, and then just draw everybody's blood work. And because there needs to be more it needs to be a clinician appointment assessment if there is concern. And so we can that's why when this first came about, the best option is to create the online booking and using the public health order to prioritize those appointments. So thank you, and I'll pass it on to Dr. Candola if it's okay with you.
Thank you, Minister Simler. Dr. Candola?
So it's regarding the older children that might have gone through the school system. So in 2019, we went from the 10 micrograms per liter to 5. And a lot of our results are, what we see are between 5 and 10. So before 2019, we wouldn't be even issuing public health guidance on some of these drinking water sources because they would have met the Health Canada standards at that time. And when you look specifically at blood lead levels, testing later, the levels would be, unless they have an ongoing source of lead exposure, you wouldn't be picking up any type of abnormality. And so even in the situation where we're looking at William Mac, where we had elevated lead levels in a number of drinking water sources, the blood lead levels of those students did not come back in exceedance. So what I would anticipate, even with older students, is that they would have normal blood lead levels. And if you're looking at chronic long-term lead level exposure, that in itself would still need to look at the amount the person was intaking, the concentration, and their age. And so from what I've seen and heard, I don't anticipate that there was any long-term impacts, and I anticipate that the older students would not have elevated blood levels from this source. And so it would be mainly focusing on students who are actively attending the schools at this point. And I also anticipate that their blood lead levels will be low because the amount that they would be drinking and the levels that we are seeing are not in our testing protocols would not lead to elevated lead levels that would require any type of intervention.
Thank you to Dr. Canole. We're running short on time. We have three members who would like to ask questions. We'll just get them to ask one questions, and hopefully we can get through this time. MLA Testart.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. So just so we can have absolute certainty around the costs of this, because I don't want to see this fall onto education bodies. So can we just have assurances that the GNWT is shouldering the cost of all the mitigation efforts that are going in place, the testing, the bottled water or alternative water sources, and the remediation, protocols that are put in place, whether it's replacing piping or fixtures or whatever? Is the GNWT covering 100% of the cost? Thank you.
Minister Cleveland.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The answer to that is yes, the GNWT is taking on that cost, including the cost of the alternative drinking water sources. Thank you.
Thank you. MLA McNeely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My closing statement, I don't want to close this file here. We recognize on page number 10 here where the source. So we know it's the fixture sources, the fountains. We have fountains in the school. We have fountains in our other public building, our terminals. And we checked half of the schools of the total 40-some. So really not done yet. So I don't want to close the file. I think we should have another follow-up update here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. McNeely. Is more of a comment than anything? Okay, we'll go to our final question. Mr. Moore, MLA Morse.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I only have one question left. So in response to my previous question, the CPHO responded that we don't currently regulate lead testing in schools and or childcare facilities. But as I was noting in my question, Ontario does regulate this. What I'm asking is if we should follow suit. And are we investigating the possibility of following suit? And are we going to be making a determination about whether we need to regulate it? And I guess I would just note that I'm getting a bit confused here because if the CPHO is so unconcerned about the risk, why are we responding the way we are in our schools? I'm having difficulty making sense of the disinterest in regulating and the communication that so far there hasn't been a health risk identified, but also we are urgently responding to what is being communicated as an identified risk. So there's a disconnect here that I can't make sense of between what the CPHO is telling us and how we're reacting to the problem in the schools, or is it a problem? This is where I can't really make sense. And so I'm trying to understand if this is a risk, it seems like something that we should consider regulating. If it's not a risk, why are we responding so urgently? Thank you.
Thank you, MLA Morse. Any takers? Dr. Candola?
So there's two things that people need to be testing for in the homes. Radon's one, lead's another one. And we give parameters of who gets tested. Not everybody needs to test, but if your building's older and you think that there is lead piping or lead fixtures, we strongly recommend testing. But just because we don't regulate and enforce it doesn't mean we're not disinterested. We are concerned. Just similar to radon, as a radon is a recommendation, we recommend that people test their homes for radon. But we, having just gone through the COVID pandemic, a CPHO that's over-regulating is not what the public appetite is right now. I will strongly recommend that people test for radon and test for lead. And that's what we will do, and that's what we'll promote. But right now, we cannot regulate it under our Public Health Act.
Thank you, Dr. Candola. It was mentioned by one of our MLAs that Minister Simler respond to this question. Minister Simler.
Dr. Candola is the expert in this area, and therefore, I'll leave that technical expertise to Dr. Candola.
Okay, thank you, Minister Simler. Okay, this concludes, I don't see any other questions. That brings this briefing to a close. Before that, do any of the witnesses have any closing remarks or final thoughts to share with committee? Minister Cleveland?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, just want to reiterate that we are prioritizing this work as cabinet and as a government, that we are focusing on being solutions-oriented. We are prioritizing transparency and communication with residents of this territory, and our paramount focus is the safety of staff and students at all of our schools. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to committee for your time and your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Cleveland. Okay. Thank you very much for appearing today. This concludes the public portion of our meeting. Colleagues, just ask you to stay for a briefing. Thank you.